Okay, welcome folks. Episode 1 of a podcast still to be named. What a pleasure, what an honour to have my mentor, my boss, just an all-round good bloke, Jack Henderson, Hendering of the Property Flamingo. How
mate,
are you?
Thanks for having me, and mate. You know what? I think it's a testament to your what's the word I'm looking for? Courage, maybe courage. So you want to go out there and get it. So, mate, I'm happy that you're doing a flamingo, and for me to be the first guest, we were just chatting actually. The Sam Black has the Sam Black sessions, and I was the first.
Iconic.
I was the first guest on the Sam Black sessions, and I wasn't present. I was on my phone the whole episode, so I thought we'll escape that and we'll go live.
We've got all the fans over there live. Thank you for joining us live. Very nervous if you can't tell, but here we go, Jack Henderson.
Come on, mate, kick it off.
Let's get it started. Just for my audience, of course, a bit younger. I guess this podcast is for the young battlers out there.
The punters from Penrith.
Just trying to figure their way out on the path. So I guess, Jack, tell us about how everything got started. Tell us about the background, if you will.
Yeah, so, mate, my story isn't a very long story. I'm only 24, going on 25 next month, but probably not the traditional... I would say story of an eastern suburbs real estate agent, that's for sure.
I definitely agree.
So, mate, I grew up in a normal household. Mum and dad both work full time in a suburb called Wilberforce. Which
Shout out to the head of happiness, of course. We love you, Jackie.
Yeah, so that was grew up in a place called Wilberforce, which is sort of like 50 kilometres northwest of Sydney. Mate, very normal household. You know, like I said, dad was a construction manager. Mum was, working in health and safety. And mate, I just was a normal kid, I was Mr. Average at everything. I felt like I was never the best at sport. I was always just mediocre, was mediocre looking, was mediocre at everything, right? And
I can't agree with that one.
and that was a flamingo noise, that one. And mate, looking back on the way I grew up, I think I've realised why I am the way I am right now. But mate, went to two public schools. One public school for primary, Wilberforce Public. And mate, I was actually a really big liar when I was young. I used to lie a lot, and I don't know why. I just felt like I was I always had to prove to someone that I was better than them, or I had the same as them. And in Wilberforce, it's a weird place. It's just a normal suburb on the Hawkesbury River. I always had comparison. I always compared myself to other people. And when you're young and naive, you don't understand debt. You don't understand anything. So you see your friends. Parents have these nice cars and nice houses and live on the river and they have boats and all the rest of it. I didn't have all of that, and I never went without. But we just didn't have it. And I always used to lie about what we had. Oh yeah, we've got this, we've got that. I remember it was like I was in like year 4 or year 5. I stood up at the front of the classroom and it was like show and tell from the weekend or some shit. And I got a photo of a Super Air Nautique, which is a wakeboard boat for people who don't know, off Google. And it was just like, it was like 10 people in this boat. It was just like one of the photos that Air Nautique would use for their marketing. And I stood up at the front of the classroom. I remember it so clearly. And I said, this is me and my family on the weekend in Sydney Harbour. And that was just who I was, right? Yeah. I always lied, and I always used to get caught out, and it made me look like an idiot. And as I grew up, I grew out of that, obviously. You start to get older and you start to embarrass yourself and embarrass your parents more and more. So, mate, got into high school, and I don't know when things changed, but I never wanted to learn from people who weren't in the position that I wanted to be. And obviously that changed over my childhood and teenage years. But, I used to look at school teachers and say, well, you earn 60 or 80 grand a year. Like, why am I listening to what you have to say? Okay. And that's ego, and that's not really understanding a lot of stuff. But that's how I was. I never used to want to listen in class. I was quite academic, but I never used to, put in 100% of myself. I'd distract the class and be the class clown, and that was probably insecurities and all the rest of it. So I got expelled from one of my high schools.
I wasn't going to mention that. I'm glad you brought it up.
Mate, I'm more than happy to. Yeah, so I got expelled from a school, not because I was selling drugs or I was, fighting people. I didn't want to be there, and it made it hard for my teachers to teach. So that was in like year 9, I think. And then I went to another high school, and I was going to have a fresh start. And I was into motocross when I was going through high school. Like that's all I cared about was going to school and then riding on the weekends. And we moved into a house that had acreage when I was growing up, so we used to be able to ride at home. And
nice dirt divot everywhere.
Yeah, mate. That house now my parents still live in, and the paddock used to just be a motocross track, and now it looks like a golf course because my dad loves his lawn. Shout out Rob. Yeah, big Rob. So motocross is my thing, and when I went to the new school, there's this place in the US which was the #1 training camp or training facility in the world for motocross, and it was called MTF, which was Millsap's training facility.
Even I've heard of Millsap.
Yeah. So and when I went to the new school, I made a bet with Mum, and Mum said that if you don't, I think it was like don't get a detention or don't get suspended or something until you finish your HSC, I'll send you to MTF.
Wow.
So I was like, yes, I'm going to do it. 6 weeks in. It's like...
6 weeks.
That goal was...
That would have been a long 6 weeks.
That goal was gone,
well.
And yeah, I ended up, getting expelled from that school as well about 12 months later. And that was when I was just before I turned 16. And again, the reason that happened is because I just didn't want to listen to my teachers. I thought I knew better than them. And my, like I said, my philosophy and my thought process around it was, why am I listening to you if you are not in the position that I want to be in? And to be honest, I didn't even know what I wanted to be or who I wanted to be. Then I just knew that I wanted to be rich and I wanted to have everything that I thought I didn't have when I was younger.
Right.
So, I got expelled, and at that point, I was just 15 or 16 years old. Didn't have a license, obviously. Didn't even have my L's, I don't think. And the only career prospect I had was somewhere that I could get to and from work. So I either had to work somewhere locally near my house or go and work with my dad because I could go to and from work with dad. So
just quickly while we're here, you've just been expelled from school. I'm only just leaving school now myself into the real world, and I'm still in a very sheltered environment, but I'm definitely feeling the real world, quote unquote real world. At that age, just turning 16, like how does that affect a 16-year-old man?
I didn't care. That's how
right.
As you do when you're that age, you think you're cool and all the rest of it. So I was like, yeah, I don't really care.
Yeah, so you never really got that slap across the face, like
mate. I got slapped across the face by the parents many times. Like it was the worst.
Yeah, okay.
Now I look back on it, like it was. My mum was distraught. Her child, who was meant to be everything, has been expelled from school, and all I cared about was motocross. So I didn't have any career prospects. I didn't have a school certificate, and I was going to work for my dad as a labourer. So, in a parent's eyes, looking at it, you're like, my son is a failure. Next stop is probably a rehab clinic or something. So yeah, did that, and then I went and worked with my dad as a labourer. 15 years old, again, probably didn't listen like I should have at work, and probably made it more difficult for my dad than what it had to be. But as I was starting to do that, like you said, I was starting to get exposure to the real world, and not consciously, but unconsciously looking at all the people around you going, these people are 50, 60 years old, they're doing the same job as you are as a 15-year-old. They drive old banged up cars, they've all, you're hearing, you work with 50-year-old men, and they talk to you like you're one of them. They don't talk to you like you're a 15-year-old kid.
And you of course picture yourself at that age doing the same thing.
I wasn't picturing myself consciously at that age, but subconsciously or unconsciously, your brain starts to pick up and you start to go like, fuck, could be it's going to be a fun life. So with that come me going, well, I need to do something. Like I'm not going to be a labourer for the rest of my life. I'm not going to be an operator. Like even at the top of the construction game, uneducated top of the construction game, like you can be a project manager, you can be a foreman, or you could, be, when I ended up going to the mines, a mine manager or something like that. But again, like the amount of money you can earn there, for the majority of the people, $250,000 a year is a lot of money, but for me it wasn't. I always, was quite ambitious and wanted to have everything and be everything. So that was when I started to educate myself, and mate, from 16 years old, I think that's when everything started to sort of change. I didn't have education anymore. I wasn't getting taught anything by anyone, and now was my time to learn from people that I wanted to be like, right? Because that's what I always said in school. I only learn from people who I want to be like someone. So, mate, just like podcast, YouTube, books, seminars, literally was my life from 16 years old even until now. Like, I don't think there'd be too many people out there that can
still when I jump in the car with you, there's always a bit of Gary Vee going on. Or
there's not too many people that would consume as much, educational content as what I do. And mate, that's when everything really shifted, and it opened my eyes to what's possible in the world, changed the way I thought, changed the way I perceived things. And yeah, man, that was it. Sort of from 16, started saving my pennies, and started educating myself. It was all about money at that stage. It was how I could be, how I could make a lot of money, how I could be rich. That's what I cared about, right? I didn't really care about a career prospect. It was just like, how can I make money? And something that stood out to me was property investing, because you didn't have to be a genius, and it was pretty easy to do. And, mum and dad, as they always said, the biggest financial decision you'll make in your life is to buy your first property or buy a property. So I thought, well, I'm earning 80 grand a year or 70 grand a year, whatever it was, as a labourer. And I had no car, I had no expenses, I didn't pay board. The only thing I could spend my money on was Rip Curl clothes and Xbox games. And mate, that's what happened. I just saved my money, and by the time I got to 18 years old, I had a deposit, and I had a basic education of what needed to happen, and I bought my first property, and that was huge. That was sort of where it all sort of kicked off from. Got myself my first mentor in Chris Gray, and mate, it's been a journey since then.
It's been a roller coaster. Strap in, huh? So instantly you hear that you're still 24, and that's takes a lot of self-awareness, especially me knowing you, being around you for all this time. A lot of people at 24, this is kind of what they dream of, right? Having the money, having business, having people working for you. But I guess you still have that. How has that self-awareness come about, essentially, to know all this and be so conscious about that, and to grow from it?
Mate, a lot of learning. Like, I'm still so much learn. Like, I've got 4 coaches on a full-time basis every single week. That cost me a lot of money, but like I'm constantly learning, and my mindset's changed dramatically, and the way I think about things changed dramatically, and the people I have in my life has changed dramatically over since I've been sort of 17, 18 until now. And mate, I don't think that you ever stop learning. Like, I think there's key things that you learn, which are probably the foundations of how you see the world. But from there, you're always tinkering things. No one's perfect, mate. Like, you look at people who are at the top of their game, like your Jeff Bezos and your Bill Gates, and sure, they're masters of business, and from the outside they look like they've got their life sorted, but they've just both had divorces because of different reasons. So, mate, we're all human beings, right? So, mate, it's interesting. I don't know. I don't know the question, but I think the biggest thing that's impacted my life and the way I think is the people that I surround myself with, without a doubt in my mind. Like, I surround myself with people who have made a lot of money and who are at the top of their game, or have been at the top of their game, and instead of learning from my own mistakes, I'd much rather learn from other people's mistakes. So the mentors and the coaches that I have, and the friends that I have. If you're constantly hearing that information, and you're constantly surrounding yourself with that, and you constantly listen to podcasts and books and all the rest of it, then that's the way you think. You don't know different, right? It just becomes normal to us, and I think that's the biggest thing. There's a saying where it's like you become the average of your 5 closest friends, or the 5 people you spend most time with, and that's so true. Because there's no difference from me to anyone else.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
At my age, I'm no different. I come from humble beginnings. I don't have any more money. I didn't have any more money than anyone else growing up. My family was just a normal Australian family, but I just think differently, and I have an abundant mindset. So, and that just changes everything.
Yeah, and I think being around you so much, essentially being a shadow, a leech, really, that's a perfect word.
I just wake up in the morning and there you are. Fuck.
Like a nice little alarm clock. But I think...
and that's actually not a joke either. Like this morning, for example, I said, Julia, let's go to the gym. So we get to the gym at 5:30. So I wake up, my alarm goes off at 5 and I get out of bed at about 5:15. And at about 8 minutes past 5, he just lets himself in my back door.
I know where your key is.
And now I'll be with him. I'll be with him the whole time until we go to 8 p.m. tonight when I go to sleep.
Yeah. And I think, especially, I guess, this whole idea of investment, that's big investor yourself, but ultimately, you invest in yourself more than anything. You mentioned that you have 4 coaches and just a constant amount of time absorbing whatever it may be, podcasts, seminars. And I guess, where does that come from? I guess... I think it's very difficult for someone at that age to go, look, pour a lot of money into themselves like that.
Yeah, but mate, like it is. That's a good question. It's not hard. Like I've always invested my money into property, and I just bought another property then, quite recently, a couple of weeks ago.
Congratulations.
And I look. Like you just have to. The way I look at life now is like whatever you put your resources into will grow. So, a lot of people that I talk to are like, "Fuck me, you've got a lot of staff now all of a sudden, and it's very expensive to have staff." But it's not an expense; it's an investment, right? And I'm exactly the same. I probably spend, realistically, probably $20,000 a month on coaching for myself. Like that's not a bullshit number. That's probably what I spend in with all the coaching that I have. And mate, like it pays. I mean, if you get the coaching and then just don't listen to what people say and do what they say, then of course it's not going to fucking work, right? It's just like going to the gym and having a personal trainer and saying do 10 push-ups, and you say, fuck you, I'm going to eat a donut. Like, of course it's not going to work. But I spend a lot of money on my coaching. I do what they say, and it's worked so far, and that's what gives me confidence to keep doing it, right? And it seems for my life, the more money that I've invested in different things, the more it's given me. So I don't ever even think about it. I just go, how much is it? Okay, great. And I just pay.
Because something I've really picked up is that you don't see how much something's taking from you, it's how much something's giving to you.
Yeah, and that's the mindset that I've adopted, like, having a scarce mindset and going, fuck, how much is that? Like, watching your pennies. I mean, look, you still have to have some concept of how much money you're spending. I really don't have a concept of how much money I spend, which isn't a good thing. But I literally would not care or do not care about what things cost. I just need to know that it's going to give me a return, for example. So, my mum manages all of my finances, the head of happiness, and like I'll be saying, can you please go and get that? And when she first started, she was like, oh, you sure you need to spend that much money on something? But it doesn't even fathom. I mean, I'm tight as fuck when it comes to certain things. Like I don't waste money on shit unless I'm on the piss, which I've given up for the last 6 months.
Which we'll talk about for sure.
But if I'm more than happy to spend money on things that I know it's going to come back in droves, and it always does. Like if you spend your money on the right things, it will. I think it'll always come back.
Yeah, okay, that's definitely great. I think kids my age, we're kind of pulling in the dollars quite close to try and battle on by the next beer.
Like for example, so I was 17. I had my piece. I was 17 years old, and as a 17-year-old, like all you care about is spending your money on shit, really. Like not many 17-year-olds are spending money on good things. But like I paid, I think it was $1,500 for my first ever coaching session when I was 17 years old, mentoring session with Chris Gray, and like $1,500 even for anyone, it's a lot of money, right? And it was probably 2 weeks worth of wage, and I was like, I'm going to spend $1,500 and I got a coaching session at 17 years old.
Yeah.
Went and had lunch with Chris at Woolloomooloo Wharf. And Woolloomooloo Wharf, when you grow up in northwest Sydney, where your local Chinese restaurant is, looks a bit like a jail.
Just
there's
as
a lot of
exotic
money,
as
and
it
I was
gets,
just like,
yeah.
but from that minute that I spent, it just opened your eyes up to, because in reality, like if you think $1,500 is a lot of money, then it is a lot of money. But you look at someone like Gary Vee, for example, who has his personal team that just does his media, so all of his content. He spends $200,000 a month on that team.
Wow.
$2.5 million a year to have people following him around with cameras, and do.
Well, hey, Grace.
Grace is here. But if you look at that as a lot of money, it is a lot of money. But he looks at that as like, well, it's not a lot of money. So I think it's all perception, and it's all relative.
Yeah.
So from starting on that, now when I spend, like I said, $20,000 a month or whatever it is on coaching, if you look at it as $20,000 a month, it's a lot of money. But in reality, it's not a lot of money because that $20,000 is going to make me $200,000 a month. You know what I mean? It's all relative. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But investing in yourself, mate, is crucial. Like not growing up in the eastern suburbs, and obviously the eastern suburbs is probably one of the most affluent areas in the world. And sure, I drive a nice car, but growing up here and being conscious like I am now, and looking at all the people that are especially in this industry and are of similar age, like all the brand name clothes and the perception that people have to pretend that they're rich, whether it's girls with $5,000 or $6,000 Louis Vuitton handbags, or men with all the shit that they wear. Like, I wear nice clothes, but none of it's designer.
No.
But then they don't spend any money on themselves. So people are like, fuck, why do you spend that money on whatever you do? But it's like, well, yeah, I spend money on that, but you spend money on shit.
A belt.
And trust me,
G
I've spent my fair share of money on shit. But especially since going, from last year doing the 100 days of sobriety, and then now doing the year, it completely changes the way you think and the way you look at things, because you're always level-headed.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get to the sobriety.
Definitely get to that. Yeah, great question.
Bit of Chris Cochran dialogue. But what I really wanted to talk about was, I guess, we talked about Gary Vee spending all that money on his media.
Sure.
And you taking a very similar approach. The first person you hired, shout out Sam Black, was as a videographer. And I think a lot of people first hiring is an assistant of something.
Generally, yeah.
But I guess now you've just grown this huge, you've marketed yourself so well. This whole Henderson property Flamingo. And I really want to talk about that. I guess, how did this all come about, the whole marketing yourself at this level?
Well, again, it's listening to people who are in the position that you want to be in, like Gary Vaynerchuk is an exceptional businessman. And the reason he has the brand he has is because he's done the things that he does, right? So if you can learn from that, then why not? So my concept behind that was I started in the industry in October of 2019. I come out of mining, mind you. So I had no fucking idea what sales were. I was like, sales? What? I knew property because I had my own portfolio and I'd been around it now for a little while. Obviously, I had Chris Gray as a mentor. Coming in the industry, and I remember I sat down with Tristan Oddie, who's a very good friend of mine right now, and probably always will be. I sat down and he looks at me as I walk in with no socks on and all that jazz, and so who the fuck is this guy? And I remember sitting there, and he'll tell you the story. I sat there and I said, mate, this is what I'm going to do. Like this is my plan for this 3 months. I'm going to really learn the ropes, and then from January I'm going to have this and grow the media team and have a podcast and grow like an incredible personal brand. And obviously told him my big goals, and he goes, oh yeah, that's good. Probably heard it a million times. So the January come around, and Sam was looking for what's going on. Just got some guests. So hired Sam to do my videography. Probably couldn't really afford it at the time, to be honest, but you're never going to be ready to do something. So I just went out there, I hired Sam, we bought a camera, and mate, I was just this kid who was getting around the eastern suburbs driving a no birds hire car with some dude with a camera next to him. And that's where it started, right? And I mean, I've only been in the industry for 18 months since then, but I feel like my personal brand's grown quite significantly in that time, and obviously the media team now has gone from 1 to 3 people, and mate, it's a no-brainer, right? The more people who know who you are, the better it is. Not just for business, but for everything. So the more people who know who Jack Henderson is, the more people want to do business with Jack Henderson. And now with staff and growing a team, again, people come to me. Not once have I gone out there looking for people, except for Will I Am, actually. He was the blessed one. Not once have I gone out there to look for someone. People have always come to me. Like every single person who works for me come to me. I never went and found them. And that's the thing about having a personal brand. So that was a
And when it comes to growing that brand, the content and stuff that you put out to entice people, I guess, what do you think makes people want to follow you and follow your journey?
I don't know, and I don't really care. I just do my own thing. Like I just document myself. I'm very different to everyone else. I've unapologetically myself. I've obviously got the flamingo thing that's attached to me, and that's unique. So whether people talk about me in a good way or a bad way, they still talk about me, which is great. So I wear a pink suit. I drive a loud car. I'm starting to get into tracksuits now, actually. So
quite an array of tracksuits
I've got some bright coloured tracksuits, and look, man, it's all strategic. Like I don't do this because I've got an ego. I do it because, like I said, the more people who talk about me, the better. So I didn't grow up in the eastern suburbs. 18 months ago, I knew nobody here, and I want everyone to know who I am. So the way you get everyone to know who you are is be loud, be somewhat obnoxious in a humble way, and get people talking. And some people will love you, some people will hate you, but like I said, at least they know who you are. Yeah.
And it takes a lot. It takes a lot of courage, especially in 18 months, to really put yourself out there, be so authentic. And I think that comes from, I guess, a very strong self-image.
It's exactly what it is. We had to talk about this the other day.
Yeah.
And I never used to have a strong self-image. I used to look at myself very poorly, hence the reason I used to lie. And now my self-image, I reckon, is probably one of the strongest self-images that I know. I look at myself that I don't doubt anything. As soon as I say something and I say I'm going to do it, I don't doubt that I can't do it. And that's the importance, I think, of having a self-image. And sure, it's not always like that. Sure, you have little increments of doubt, and you hear things, or something happens, you go, oh, maybe I'm full of shit, right? And I just finished at ARIC, and I think it was Jodie Fox was talking at ARIC, and she said, one of the biggest things is don't lie to yourself. Don't be a bullshit artist to yourself. And that really resonated with me, because if you say you're going to do something to yourself and you don't do it, you're lying to yourself. And David Goggins talks about this all the time. So, that's why committing to the year of sobriety was super important to me. In committing to it, and everyone's like, you're not gonna do that, but I don't care about the other people. It's committing to yourself and going, yes, I can do it. And I'm doing the 75-day hard challenge now, and it's less about everyone else and more about building my own self-image, more about building my self-confidence, and building the, I guess, internal strength to when you commit to something, it happens. Manifestation I really believe in, and everything that I've ever wanted so far to happen, and anything that I've thought about and really put my mind to has happened. Mate, self-image, yes, it's super important. Yeah,
and especially, I guess, starting in the industry not very long ago at all, and seeing all that growth, it's really just been from you being so confident in yourself.
Well, confidence breeds confidence, right? So the more confident you are in yourself, and I mean, you have to be confident and know your shit at the same time, right? Like you can't be confident and full of shit. So, being confident, having the knowledge, it breeds confidence. So when you sit in front of someone, they feel that. When you sit in front of a business partner, they feel that. When you talk, people feel that. And not a lot of people do it. Yeah, so it works.
And I guess now you've got such a big team.
It's not big. It's tiny compared to what it's going to be.
Having a team around you, I guess when you started, it wasn't like this at all. It was very much yourself. How's that transition from, I guess, being a lone wolf to, I guess, now having people around you and having to have that, I guess, a much more businessman mindset, much more of a leader mindset?
Yeah, man, I haven't worked it out yet. Like, I think the team's like over 20 now, which is, from 3 at the end of last year to 20 is obviously, pretty big growth. And obviously the marketplace has something to do with that as well. But You need to, the biggest thing that I've learned is I used to do everything, you know, so my calendar was just so full back to back all day, every day. And I love that chaos. I love being busy all the time. And, but now, you know, I've got a lot of people that do a lot of things for me, and it frees up my time to, work on the business and be strategic and always be thinking about new ideas and, while also still servicing the clients. But it's all learning. Like, my coach Jeff Jowett says, you know, as the face of the business and the spearhead of the business, you need to make it rain, and the people, you know, inside of your team need to have the bucket and catch it. So that's sort of my thinking now, is like, how can I build the brand? How can I, you know, generate more business and continue the growth, which then, as a benefit, the team will also, you know, feel that.
They're the fruits.
They're the fruits. Yeah. So that's my thing now, is constantly, you know, growing a brand and being strategic about the way we do things, and being very outlandish. You know, I've got some pretty big ideas that are gonna happen soon. Just wrote my first children's book, which is pretty funny. So yeah, man, like all of that sort of stuff is it's changed. And instead of being inside of the business, you know, and most people are inside of the business forever because they never work that out. But that's the thing about having all these great people around you who have built businesses that, you know, generate tens of millions of dollars in revenue and have teams of not 20 but hundreds and thousands of people, like literally hundreds or thousands, of people. Mate, that's the benefit of having those people around you, is they know what to do and they know how to get you out of your business and start working on the business, which is beneficial.
Yeah. And I guess going to that Henderson advocacy, building your own brand, is there something you can attribute it to as Jack Henderson, that's kind of been the foundation in which you've built the brand on, that makes people like me like want to work for you?
Well, it's just different, right? Like, I don't know. I think like most industries, everyone who's in the industry is the same, and generally the people who are they end up becoming the market leaders, or the industry changes are different. Like they don't do things the conventional way. They're loud. They, you know, probably piss some people off, and that's what I plan to do, is like be different to everyone else. And generally real estate, especially in the eastern suburbs, or Newcastle where the other office is, or Brisbane where we're launching next month, is they're generally quite conservative in nature, right? No one sticks their head up too far. They all just sort of, you know, go along together, and it's boring as bad shit. It's so boring, right? And mate, I want to grow a brand that is always sticking its head out, you know, wanting to get chopped off. So yeah, Josh Tesselin said something at ARIC. It was quite funny. He obviously went through some shit with his past employer, and they said they try to chop him from the legs, and he chopped them from the neck. So that's how I sort of look at things.
And still, there's so much to come.
Nate, we're only 6 months into a journey that will probably last the next 50 plus years.
Don't worry, mate. I'll still be leashing off you then too.
5:13 in the morning, George. Hey,
you love it though, don't you?
Oh yeah, it's gold.
And where do you see yourself in that time? Because I guess someone like me, they see the money, the car, and want to get to that so quickly, but you've got so much more than that behind you. What's the plan?
Mate, the end goal is to have an international building and developing business. Yeah, so you know, to build a brand and a reputation as Henderson, and have a global organisation that mate, has buildings in all major cities around the world. You know, like if you look at the Meriton model in New South Wales, Meriton's a very, very reputable brand. Everyone knows what Meriton is when you say Meriton, but it's not known for luxury. It's a low cost, cheap fit out product. But it's got a brand, but the brand is attached to that stigma. Where, you know, where I see Henderson is, especially moving into the economy that we're going with technology and all the rest of it. Henderson will be, you know, the global leader in luxury residences, because, you know, Tim Gurner is doing a pretty incredible job of it from the project he's doing in Melbourne, where, you know, you build a building and your building brings so much to wherever it is. You know, you look at somewhere like Crown at One Barangaroo, for example, you know, the reason all of those restaurants and all of the money is going to Barangaroo is because of Crown. And that's how I see Henderson being, is building buildings that bring people want to attach themselves to those buildings because it is affluence and it is prestige and you know, it's which I think no one's doing in the world. Like there's a gap there for that. Less about profit, more about brand, and that's sort of my philosophy is brand over time will always win. You know, like
And with brand, someone, for example, at my age, wanting to build that brand and get to that level, what are the foundation? What's the building block to build that brand? To, I guess, have eyeballs on you.
Mate, I'm not an expert at it. That's for sure. I've only got fucking 2,500 followers or something on Instagram. You know, I'm not some global leader, but I'm just myself, and people like people who are themselves because it's new. Like you know, no one is Jack Henderson except Jack Henderson. You know, Jack Henderson can try and be other people, sure, but then you're not Jack Henderson. So as long as you're yourself and you're somewhat interesting, I mean, being vanilla characters, no one's probably going to buy into that. But if you're polarizing and you've got a outlandish personality and mate, there's people that like that shit. So that's what I've done.
It's worked out pretty well so far.
It's working all right, yeah. So.
Well, thanks for your time, mate.
Mate, thanks for coming on. I've just
finished
finished this glass of water and I need to go to the toilet.
I'm about to piss my pants. So that's the only.
Mate, it was really good.
First
Really
of many,
good
hopefully.
being on the podcast, and I'm very proud of you to actually take the step and do a podcast. So, well done.
Cheers, boss. Until next time.